and I feel this sort of grief come up out of me. And just like everybody's silent, I think that Gwendolyn is sobbing and Robyn's trying to console her. This
This
grief.
has been one of the hottest and most contentious seasons ever. After 22 episodes, what we've witnessed is a deplorable effort on the part of Kody Brown and Robyn to manipulate things. They've tried to change the course of history, shooting scenes after the tragic loss of Garrison, but presenting them as if they'd already been shot. The motive? To paint Kody as a loving, present father on a road of redemption. But that fantasy didn't last, and when it unraveled, the result was devastating and very, very disturbing. And this is where it hurts the most. As a spectator and as a human being, it was gut-wrenching to see. Garrison was unseen for the bulk of this season, his life erased from the show. Not a word spoken, not a moment acknowledged. But then we discover his last message was to a group that included Cody, TLC, and other family members. I want to hate you for the good times, but I can't. I miss those days. A sad, sorrowful thought from a son to a father who did not answer. Cody didn't show up when it mattered, not when the message came, not when Garrison passed away. And yet, somehow, he was included in the funeral arrangements and decisions. The same man who had abandoned his child was suddenly being accorded the status of prime figure in his son's farewell. It was infuriating. Garrison's alienation wasn't an accident or even subtle. It was the product of repeated emotional abuse. Cody deliberately cut him off. He ridiculed Garrison for buying a car, then a home, and afterward for choosing to live in an RV near Janelle's house. He called his own son a narcissist. He ridiculed him on national television. He even wished him evicted at one time. That is not discipline. That is abandonment. And yet, after they broke up, Cody was still given a voice about how his son's life was celebrated. But it gets still more painful. In an inexplicable display of coldness, Kody and Robyn sent their daughter Mykelti to call Garrison to let him know they were withdrawing from the family Christmas gift exchange. They weren't walking away from just one member, were backing off from all except those who remained in their immediate family structure. Garrison felt injured. He was ostracized, lonely, and another straw added to the wall of insulation Cody created between his kids and him. Still with me? Because this next part is crucial. Despite all of that, it was Janelle, the one who actually did show up, bore the emotional weight. Garrison spent his final moments seething with anger, suffering with anguish, and silence from his father. The only person who was able to make contact was Janelle. And although her pain was fresh and raw, she was solid, doing what she had to do in front of the public. But one can't help but wonder, why did she need to? Why did she need to occupy space, both on screen and at the funeral, with the same man who abandoned her child? And here's where things take another sinister turn. Garrison was buried in Wyoming, on a ranch that was related to Cody's dad. It was a heavy, emotionally loaded spot for Janelle and the majority of the children. It wasn't where Garrison had lived, laughed, or loved. It was where Cody came from, and choosing that spot felt symbolic. Another moment when Cody's own identity mattered more than his son's story. Let's pause here, because the melancholy of this moment is worth it. We saw the destruction etched on the faces of the first three wives, especially Janelle. Their sorrow was not fake and was emotionally deep. Concurrently, Cody was given the role of the grieving father by TLC, a role he did not merit. The network's attempt to rebrand his image in this manner was such an insult to viewers who have seen this family implode. It was frustrating, and more than that, it was infuriating. And finally, we heard the siblings. Powerful voices emerged to speak their story. And when Gabriel spoke, and it was not an easy one to tell, but described what it had been like to be the person who had found his brother, it was a moment that shook the whole house. So, why is this significant? Because loss can't be resold for TV. because abandonment isn't erased with a eulogy speech, and because Garrison deserved better, more love, more acknowledgement, more honesty. This season tried to stage Kody's redemption, but the true story cut through, and it's one of loss, shattered relationships, and a family trying to get on with their lives without the support they needed most.
Gare really was like so genuine, and he didn't let on to it a lot, but he always felt a lot deeper.
And then Janelle cracked open, giving perhaps the most intimate and affecting revelation yet. She told of the final hours she remained on the phone with Garrison, something no mother ever has to talk about. He'd been struggling with depression, anxiety, and fighting booze. Janelle did everything. She offered help, she pleaded, she loved. But with all the best efforts on her part, there was a gut-wrenching truth that lay beneath the surface. Sometimes love just can't hold off the shadow that clings to mental illness. But this is the painful part. Janelle was not alone in trying to contact him. Hunter and Logan, Garrison's two older brothers, were also conducting a silent, constant effort to keep pace with him, to tend to him. The three of them rotated, calling in, catching up, checking on him to ensure he was still hanging on. And this was not the first night like that for Garrison. There were nights like this as well. Nights of terror, nights of tears, and prayers he'd wake up in the morning. Most of the time, he'd fall asleep and wake up again, and everything would be okay. But this time, the morning never came, and the person who found him was Gabriel. Watching Gabriel describe his brother was painful. The pain in his voice, the weight of what he endured, it was all there, unfiltered and raw. He described who Garrison actually was, a very kind, accepting individual who put everyone at ease, someone who went out of his way to make others feel seen and valued. He didn't merely care, he showed it. Gabriel referred to that as the mark of a true gentleman. But this wasn't just an homage, it was also a message. Because for all these years, Kody insisted that he was teaching his boys to be gentlemen. He constantly disapproved of them not living up to that image. Just last week, Janelle echoed even that particular phrase, retelling how Kody always insisted on manners, respect, and manliness as he knew it. But then Gabriel referred to Garrison as the actual gentleman, and it just felt deliberate. Like he said, he was what you can never be, Dad. Let that really sink in. It wasn't a contrast, though. It was a confrontation, a silent, torture-filled acknowledgement that the only son who embodied all Kody claimed to hold sacred was the one he rejected. And in the end, that boy, who gave himself utterly and longed for nothing so much as to be enough, was made unworthy, unloved, and best off gone. That's not weakness, that's sickness, and that's the worst part to see. It's tragic to think about someone so full of compassion, someone who made other human beings feel like they were seen, was never actually seen by the one person who should have been looking most closely, his father. And in that, he fell. The shame of mental illness, the stigma, the rejection, all of it cost him his life. What really surprised me in this episode was how the family members who actually had a relationship with Garrison spoke of him, and how starkly, by comparison, Kody was completely tight-lipped about the life of his son. Janelle shared with us the pain of seeing her son struggle, speaking openly of the struggles he faced, his battles with alcohol, depression, and anxiety. She did everything she could to help, but in the end, there was only so much she could do. And it wasn't just her. Gabriel also considered the kindness and compassion Garrison had for other individuals. He explained how his brother made everyone feel seen, how he went out of his way to put others at ease, what Gabriel called a true gentleman. And this wasn't simply reminiscing about their brother's character. It was a juxtaposition of how their father had treated him. And then Madison, who felt so much guilt that she and the family couldn't get Garrison to North Carolina. She tried to pull him out of Flagstaff, away from the toxic environment that seemed to suffocate him. She imagined that if only he could have started over somewhere else, everything might have been okay. The guilt of leaving him behind stuck with her, and it hurt to hear that. Christine, too, addressed the funeral so tenderly and with such sorrow. She remembered him as a little boy and how much she adored him, but the very last thing she said at the funeral that I recall, and clearly it had stuck in her head too, was, "When he's gone, you can see him in the stars." Something out of a movie that left her crying. And yet, as all of these members of his family were pondering who Garrison was, what he was to them, what was so special about him, Kody said nothing. Not one word, not even so much as a reference to what his son was like. No comment on Garrison's intelligence, work ethic, kind heart, or the fact that he was a National Guard veteran. No discussion of his troubles, no mention of his integrity. Nothing. Kody was essentially shut off from his son when he died. He did not know what Garrison had been fighting. He could not even speak to the battles with alcohol or mental illness that Garrison had been fighting. All he could do all episode long was talk incessantly about himself, about how Garrison's death had impacted him, about the guilt he now experienced after all of this had already transpired. And here is where it gets most difficult to swallow. When you lose a child, you know who he or she is. You know their personality, their fears, their dreams, their struggles. You know their highs and lows because you loved them. But Kody did not know his son. He did not know Garrison well enough to discuss his struggles, his passions, or his personality. He was a stranger to his own flesh and blood. That realization, Kody's complete separation from Garrison, was what really struck me. And it made me angry to see him be granted a voice in this episode, to see him being painted as the grieving father. He did not deserve it. He was not there enough to understand his son. He had abandoned him long before he died. And yet, there he was, pretending as if his grief should take precedence over all else. Janelle's insights about Garrison's state of mind were especially keen. She explained that his decline began when they were in Colorado. Garrison started drinking more, and his state of mind seemed to get worse. Janelle seemed hesitant about exactly what caused the transformation, but I can't help feel that she does. She could well be treading on eggshells, not wanting to go so far as to actually blame Kody or even maybe defend him or the family. And I get that. Blame is difficult to put down, especially when emotions are still raw. The thing is, though, we all know what transpired then. When Janelle says CO, it's pretty clear what she's talking about. It was the period when everything in the family came crashing down. It's the period when Kody's behavior actually began to divide the family, and it was then that Garrison's depression and isolation became more profound. Remember, this was when Kody wanted Garrison to be eliminated, blamed him for the demise of his marriage with Janelle, and then turned his back on him. He called his son a narcissist and would not allow him to be a part of family activities. Both Kody and Robyn fostered this unspoken, but not so unspoken, animosity towards him for years, where he did not feel safe and welcome. That's what happened. That's when the real pain started, and I think that's what Janelle is trying to say, without saying it. She's not placing blame, not accusing Kody of participating in this. Maybe she is just covering for him. Maybe she is trying to protect Garrison's memory from the ugliness of the past. But we all know. I think she knows what happened, even if she doesn't want to say it. And then there's the final letter that Garrison writes to Janelle, that finally makes everything make sense. He talked about how angry he was at his dad, about how things were shattered, about being a ghost in his own family, even about seeing an old picture and thinking it was new, but not, and which brought yet more anger and sorrow. He wasn't mad at the show. He was mad at his dad. And we need to understand that. And here's the worst part. Alcohol didn't help. If anything, it made it worse. When you have depression and anxiety, alcohol is the last thing that you should be using as a means of coping. It's a depressant, a downer, and it takes away the brain's ability to cope with feelings in a healthy manner. Drinking merely adds to the darkness that's already there, and in Garrison's case, it not only added to his problems, it could have made things spiral even more out of control. What if he hadn't been drinking that night? Would things have been different? We'll never know. But Janelle knows exactly what happened. She just hasn't said it yet. Maybe we'll hear more as time goes on. Maybe in future episodes, we'll finally get the full picture. But for now, it's clear that the division caused by Kody's actions didn't just tear apart the family, it tore Garrison apart, and that pain didn't go away. There were moments in this episode that just felt so fake, and I'm not talking about the obvious staging. The fire scene where Kody sits with Robyn, talking about wanting to do things differently, that was just off. It was supposed to come across as a vulnerable, emotional moment, but there's no way it was filmed after Garrison passed. We actually know for certain that Garrison passed away during winter, with several feet of snow still being on the ground in Flagstaff. So, this was obviously filmed much later than his death. It was a staged scene intended to give the appearance of Kody being remorseful. But this is the catch. When he said to me that he wished to do better, that he wished he had more time to set things aright, it was like he nearly went all the way there with admitting he wished to repair his relationship with his kids. Then Robyn shut him down, effectively discarding it with the words, "Everyone says that. Everyone wishes they had more time." It was like she wasn't so much confirming his feelings. She was telling him, "Don't even try. You don't have to change a thing. This is all just grief." And sometimes I think about it. If Kody had someone to speak to who wasn't Robyn, would he even try to do things differently? Would he get along with his kids better if he were not constantly manipulated by her, being told that his children outside of their nuclear unit were the enemy? Robyn continually positions anyone outside of her immediate social unit as bad, and it's clearly one of the major reasons that Kody is so estranged from his children. But here's the most telling part. When she finally needed to be genuinely emotional, Robyn couldn't even be bothered. It was so painfully obvious she didn't care, despite how hard she tried to pretend otherwise. Her attempts at emotionality were merely performative, as if reading from a script she was trying to stick to but couldn't quite execute. I couldn't help but think, why does she even get the opportunity to speak here? Given that Garrison had disliked her and had been so outspoken about it, her being there in that moment felt so wrong. And it actually made me wonder, would Kody's relationship with Garrison have ended up the way it had if Robyn had never become a part of this family? Would Kody still be in this situation, being estranged from his children, disconnected, bitter, and resentful? We can't know for sure, but I think probably not. Robyn creates a lot of bifurcation. She's the enabler for so much of Kody's narcissism, perpetuating that toxic script of anyone outside their family unit is an enemy, and it's heartbreaking to witness Kody again and again succumbing to this dynamic, even when he does have moments that he's clearly seeking an out, a path to rebuilding. But then Robyn just wallops him back in place. She reminds him that he can remain the way he is, reminding him that everybody regrets something and wants to have more time, nearly like her own feelings of guilt are so strong that she does not want Kody to break the cycle. And then there is that cringeworthy moment when Kody talks about wanting to bring Garrison's urn to Wyoming to bury him with his family. The entire conversation was so cringeworthy, as if he was trying to guilt-trip Robyn into letting him do it. The entire experience was manufactured, cringeworthy, and ultimately selfish. The battle between their desire to control and not being able to actually deal with what was happening was so authentic. By the end of the episode, I was raging, real rage against Kody, and revulsion and anger against both Kody and Robyn. I couldn't stop thinking, why are we giving them space? Why are they getting a chance to rant publicly their feelings, to cry about their supposed hurt, at all the missed holidays, birthdays, Christmases with Garrison. It's tragic to think about the last years of Garrison's life, where he never saw Kody at Christmas. The last time they had Christmas together was years ago, 3 and maybe 4 years ago, and then they were apart. So when Kody is talking about regrets, about what might have been, it doesn't ring quite true. Kody never takes responsibility for anything he does. He dances around apologizing for his own behavior, his emotional abuse, his verbal attack, his narcissism, his ego, that constant rage that pushed his son away. He does not accept responsibility for it, but instead wonders to himself, what if? What if? Well, here's the bitter truth. If he actually cared, if he was willing to take responsibility for the damage he inflicted, he would have a relationship with his children today. He'd be talking to them, apologizing, trying to rebuild. But no, Kody does not have a relationship with any of his children. Hunter, number Logan, number Gabriel, number Savannah, number Janelle's children, not talking to him either. Even McKelty, his loyal daughter, doesn't talk to him anymore, especially after Garrison's death. It's frustrating because Kody promised he was going to change. He said he was going to make time for his children. He said he was going to repair the damage. But see the reality, he didn't change. Instead, he made Garrison's death all about him. He used the platform to speak about how he felt about it, his regret, his guilt, his missed opportunities. And then Robyn, in all of this, said that if Kody had just apologized, things might have been different. She talked as though the answer to all of it was just him confessing his sins, as though that alone would have ended the decades of abuse and dysfunction. But I just can't help but think, what if Kody had actually cared more about Garrison's happiness than his own pride? What if he hadn't acted so irrationally towards Garrison simply because he didn't fit into his ideal family picture with Robyn? What if Robyn hadn't spent all those years painting Garrison as the villain? Would things have been different? Probably. And then the show continues. Once Garrison passed away, Kody and Robyn were laughing, dining in Scottsdale with their 3 older kids. This was just days after Garrison's death. And Kody? He started the episode talking about how he had to console his kids, but none of his 3 oldest kids even attended the funeral. It's just all scripted. The tears, the regret, it's all scripted. So why did they get so much airtime? Why were we subjected to their take, their perception of their pain, when they've clearly done nothing to warrant it? If this is actually what Kody and Robyn feel about Garrison, if this is how they're choosing to remember him, then I understand why no one talks to them anymore. The family is ostracized from them because Kody and Robyn won't change. They continue to make Garrison's death all about their emotional issues, never considering that Garrison was suffering. He was struggling with mental health problems, depression, anxiety, and alcoholism, and Kody refuses to acknowledge how his behavior exacerbated all of it. He brushes it off as unimportant. That's as close to acknowledging his role in helping make Garrison a failure as he ever gets. So, I have to ask, what did you think of this episode? Were you outraged, frustrated, disappointed? Personally, I feel sorry for the family members who genuinely loved Garrison, the ones who cared about him. They should have gotten the final say in this situation, not Kody. I don't get it how they, the ones who emotionally abused Garrison, the ones who left him, are supposed to be the victim in all of this. It's revolting. Leave me a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. If you're as passionate as I am, make sure to thumbs up this video. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye, guys.